Hello. Yes, you guessed it. It's Maddox and Dwight. We're the Connections and Community guys, and we're here to bring you another absolutely fabulous episode of For the Love of Creatives. Our guest today is Elisha Oliver. Welcome, Elisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Dwight, Maddox, and just everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I was really looking forward to being able to sit with you all and just have a conversation. And I've always um, enjoyed like just being able to talk to people. I'm a people person, so thank you for having me. A little bit about me. I am the executive director at Texas Folklife. I've been with them for about 3 years. We are a folk arts nonprofit for the state of Texas. I am in the DFW area. I have team members that are scattered throughout the state. Our mission is to really celebrate and amplify the voices of folk arts and folk leaders and traditional artists throughout the state and making sure that they have that platform. And so that's a little bit about me. By training, I am a biocultural anthropologist. And so I know people are like, well, how does that intersection happen? Anthropology and art and make that make sense. And so I know we'll probably talk a little bit about that journey as well.
Well, and it was a fellow anthropologist that introduced you to us. Former featured guest Jane Baldwin was
That's
how we
right.
met you at the Leadership Arts Institute reception.
Yes.
I have to say that slowly because it doesn't roll off my tongue easy yet. But yes, that was delightful. We absolutely love Jane. She's a really neat person.
Yeah, she is. I'm so happy that, she made that introduction. She and I were members of the same cohort for, again, I'm always thinking of, is it BCA, is it LAI? But it's the Leadership Arts, that institute that we participated in. And I'm always surprised when meet a fellow anthropologist, and Jane is an archaeologist, but we're under that same umbrella. And when we were having a conversation, and she's like, I'm an archaeologist. I'm like, no way, because for me it's usually rare. And we just hit it off. So to see her in her role as an archaeologist, and then in this creative space, I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one that's out here. And so that was really pleasing. But when she introduced us, I was just like, I felt that chemistry there, that connection, and I was like, this is going to be great, to be able to just be in fellowship with two like-minded folks.
Yeah, we definitely felt it as well as soon as she introduced us. And that's the way so many of our people come to us is we either get introduced or we're people also. So we're out and about all the time meeting mostly creatives. We do a lot of stuff that has to do with art and other forms of creativity. So, well, let's jump in and find out a little bit more of your story. Since you kind of started there, why don't you tell us how anthropology fit into that whole creative scene for you?
Anthropology, I say, was a happy accident for me. I have been a veteran educator in the public school system for almost 20 years. And I just felt myself like being very dissatisfied with teaching kids to pass a standardized test. It's like this that it's different from when I was in school, and I'm not going to sit here and age myself, but I probably did just now. But um, it was I was like, it's not true learning because it's all about getting them to pass this state mandated exam. And love teaching, love being in the classroom. But, there was at a time where I was about to be an empty nester as well. And I was like, what am I going to do? You know, um, I love being in the classroom. I love my kiddos. Um, Not really happy with the state mandated test. my daughter's about to graduate. So what am I going to do with my time? And I started taking just random classes. Um, Everything from a return to art history, which I always loved, and stumbled upon anthropology. And I had a professor, and I was like, well, I think I want to travel and I want to go to all these museums. I want to do this and that. And he was like, well, you want to do a lot. He's like, well, have you looked at anthropology? And I was like, no, because at the time, I knew archaeology, and I knew how that fit into the scope of things, but I was like, well, what would I do with anthropology? And so started taking classes at UNT and fell in love with it. And I'm like, oh, this is everything that I have ever been interested in. It has to do with different cultures and communities and just their whole life ways and the art and the food and the music. And I was like, this is great. And continued on with those classes and got a second bachelor's degree in anthropology. And then my daughter was getting ready to graduate, and I was like, well, now what? Still that thought is, what am I going to do? Am I going to travel? Am I going to, see if I'm going to do any kind of museum work? What does this look like? Am I going to go to graduate school? And I had family in Oklahoma. I tell people I am a Texas girl with Oklahoma roots, deep Oklahoma roots. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go to graduate school and applied, and it was very different from my experience at UNT. Polar opposites. Because I went in, and at UNT, everybody was like, oh, we're one big family. And it was great. My experience was great. Got to OU, and it was a very different experience. And I didn't have that kind of, we're all family, we're all creative folks. It's theory, theory, theory. But I knew that I just had fallen in love with anthropology and started looking at different ways I wanted to, bring that into something new. Still wasn't sure what I was going to do. The thought in the back of my mind is, well, I will be able to, teach in a university setting and sit around and read books all day. And that was not the case, but that's what I have. It's like, this is going to be great. I'm just going to read, read, read. I'll teach what I want. We'll talk about my favorite artwork. I'll be able to infuse it, but that was not the case. But was involved in research and working with other communities, and still being able to teach and still infuse those things that I like. So people were like, "Oh, did you teach anthropology?" And I'm like, "I did," but my favorite courses to teach were humanities. I mean, I love teaching the humanities because I could talk about, Kara Walker or Caravaggio or any of my favorite artists. And then I would always have them do a portfolio of some sort that included art pieces. And so, I was like, well, this is great. I'm still doing some anthropology, but I'm doing it in my way.
Well, it's beautiful that you could carve your path that way. And it sounds like you rolled with the punches because what I was hearing was how you just had life happening and you were ready to pivot. You were ready to meet the challenges head on and you squeezed some lemonade out of some lemons.
Yes, absolutely. I was ready to pivot. And I think about my mom always says, she was like, well, you get bored easily. And I'm like, no, I don't. I just have a lot of interest. And she's like, no, I think you get bored easily. She said, you were this way as a child. And I think about that now, as someone who is very senior in age. I'm thinking, do I get bored easily, or do I just have so many interests? And I think that there's so much to do, there. And um, she was like, no, you are bored. And I was telling her that I bought a bass guitar. Don't know the first thing about playing the bass guitar, but I have always wanted to play string instruments. My parents had another idea for me growing up. They wanted me to be a flautist. So they bought me a flute, and had me practice and practice and practice. And I was like, I want to play the guitar. And so, as someone who was exploring all of my interests, I started to find I have a cello that I've named, and an acoustic guitar, and most recently that bass guitar. And I was telling my mom, she says, "I told you, you get bored." And I'm like, "No, I just have so many interests."
Yeah.
But I tell her, I'm like, I can look at you, and she is very arts driven. I think she would have been an artist if she did not have to be a homemaker, because she is very artistic. Um, Her mother, my grandmother, very artistic, and I think she would have been an artist. And I'm like, we have this kind of same thread that runs, through the women in our family, because we've had to be, providers for children. We kind of let that art piece go. But for me, it's just like, well, I'm going to figure out a way to bring it into everything I do. And thinking about that in those initial classes that I was taking, those art history classes where, we were given projects to do, and I would do a collage, and I would be able to go out because I do photography and just shoot things that were interesting to me. It just all made sense. And I was able to take that and to put it into that anthropology as well. So I told my mom, I'm like, well, that piece is there. You all have had interest, but it's that you all, you know, put that in a box and kind of just left it because you needed to take care of the family. But for me, have always been, I'm going to push the box, I'm going to push the envelope. I'm just going to see what I can do to make sure that I can make everything fit together.
I don't sense an energy of um, boredom at all. I don't. I think I'm really resonating with you because I have a lot of interests. There's just so many things that I would love to experience and explore, and there's just not enough energy or hours or enough of me to go around. So I do what I can do, but I've been that way most of my life, and I've experienced boredom. It's a completely different energy.
Now, and when you say that, I was just like, because I would ask myself, am I just bored? And I kind of have a running joke with my friends. I'm like, well, if I'm bored, then I know I'm going to get into trouble. Um, you know, and they're like, well, what are you talking about? I'm just like, well, let's not have me get bored because I know that I will get into trouble. But I do think there's just been so much that I've been interested in that either I wasn't allowed to pursue something, like art history. I love art history. I mean, love it. But I would hear, how are you gonna sustain yourself? You know, how are you going to take care of your children? And that's one of the reasons why I got into education is because, I had two kids that I needed to have a schedule that aligned with their school schedule, and so maybe for me, now that we're having this conversation, because I hadn't thought about it that way, maybe there was a time when I was like, maybe my mom and my grandmother, where I did put that in a box.
Hmm.
And then as my daughter was getting ready to graduate, um, I was able to open the lid of that box. And I hadn't thought about that until just now. That maybe there was that time for me like them where I just put all of those interests and things I wanted to pursue in a box. And then when I knew that I could do so, then I just jumped both feet in and just started exploring all those things that appealed to me. And I still do that, you know?
It's almost inescapable. That's what was modeled, what was imprinted. And I know that it's the struggle that a lot of the creatives that we talk to deal with, where they have people that love them that try to steer them toward what they perceive as safe. And for someone who is truly creative, safe is potentially the worst thing that you can do for anything that really lights you up.
hmm
I
Yeah,
agree.
I completely agree, Dwight. And I'm thinking about that now, and I'm just like, whoa, did I just have a light bulb moment where I'm just recognizing that, because, that being in the classroom, being an educator, that was very safe.
Hmm.
That was consistent. I know that I'm going to get paid in the summer. I know that I'm going to be off when the kids are off. And then making that pivot and really not knowing, okay, what is this going to lead? Where is this going to lead? Um, there's this level of uncertainty that was there to, and still, I mean, even though I'm in this position at Texas Folklife, I still try to carve out time. Oh, I'm going to do this because I have more freedom now, to do these things. But there still is that there just a little bit like that. I think of, if I wanted to go into art full time, could I sustain myself? And what would that look like now? And would I be like a struggling artist, or and I've been told, oh, you're very idealistic and sometimes you romanticize things. And I don't think I do. I'm just thinking I'm casting this big vision, and I'm like, well, I don't know. That would be something I have to think about. But my daughter, she was like, well, why don't you stop doing everything because you love what you do when it comes to art? And she said, and just be an artist full time. And I tell her, I'm like, Danielle, that's not going to pay the bills right now. But it's one of those things that I do come back to. Whether it's writing or writing poetry, or working on a collage, or just being able to go out and shoot on a regular basis, and I'm shooting things that people probably, is that art? But it's art to me.
Yeah.
You know.
Good for you.
I love that. One of the things that you're sharing, or what I'm hearing, and I love this, is we talk to a lot of people who they try to force things. You said when it came time for your daughter to go off to school, you were like, wow, I'm going to be an empty nester. I wonder what this is going to look like. I wonder what I'm going to do. And instead of jumping in and just trying to, force something to happen, you just, I'm hearing that you just were in a state of being, and you let the varying different things present themselves to you, and you picked the one that was the shiniest, the one that drew you in the most. And what a beautiful way to move through life. I'm like sitting here going, oh, I'm having a Harry met Sally moment where I want what she's having. Because I'm not always that way. I'm not always just somebody that just says, let's just see where this takes me. And I wish I were more like that. And I'm hearing that from you. And so I'm celebrating in this moment, because I just love what you're sharing.
Well, I appreciate that. Even with my position at Texas Folklife, I'm not sure where it's going to take. And that's one of the things that, I get asked. They're like, well, have you all faced budget cuts? Well, yes, we have. Well, what does this look like? I don't know. I'm still dreaming that big dream. Not only for myself, but, for the communities that we work in. And I'm trying to make sure that art is accessible for everyone. Because I know the impact that not only that it's had on me personally, I see the impact, and then you'll hear me reference my mom and grandmother a lot, but because they were true artists, and I just know, I mean, I know that for my mom, that's what she would have done if she could have, you know, and she didn't have that opportunity. And so I'm thinking, making it accessible for those folks who have always desired to, do something creative. That's what drives me at Texas Folklife. When I'm working in these rural communities, where if it's an art desert, or if it's with a youth group who they've never heard of modeling clay, it's that when you see their face light up, when we're working with aging communities, and you see that something has sparked a memory with them, whether it's a musical selection or hearing a piece of poetry. For me, that just it drives me, because I think back to my mom, who, now she's up in age, but she'll tell me all the time. She's like, well, I got my new set of colors. And she's making these designs, and it's something that motivates her. And she was in my care for a while. She's with my sister now. And, I asked her, I'm like, well, if you could just go back right now and take classes, just or continuing education, would you do that? And I could see her face light up. And she was thinking about it. And she's like, oh, I think I'm too old, or I'll be the oldest person in class. And I don't want to do this. She's like, I'm fine just doing this. But I know in that second she was considering it because she didn't have that opportunity. And, I was like, well, maybe we'll start slow. And we went to the library, and this is rural Oklahoma. We went to the library, and I have a picture, and I can send it to you later, that we were there. And I was like, well, let's just look at some art books, because she had never been to a museum.
Mm.
All her life was dedicated to my stepfather, who was a very controlling person. And so and she had never had a library card. And here she is in her 70s, and we're signing her up for a library card. And that day was like she was probably 12 years old again, because she was just like, look at all of these books about art. And she loves to cook. And she says, and look at all of these books, of these cookbooks. And it was just so profound to me. And to know that there are other folks out there who have those same kind of experiences, that's what drives me. Is to know that if I can share that with other folks, just the joy that it would bring them in that moment.
I listen to what you say, but I also have a tendency to listen for what you don't say. And I hear things that you don't say. I know that sounds weird, but I'm hearing you right now. What I'm hearing that you're not saying is that grandma didn't have the opportunity to really be an artist, and mom didn't have the opportunity, and you have the opportunity.
Hmm. And you're correct. You're right. You're you're right. Um, and I think
You
about
said you could
that.
see you could see your mom's face light up when you ask her about that. If she could go back and redo it, and her face lit up, whole roadmap right there.
Hmm.
Like in that moment, what came to me was she's not saying it, but she's demonstrating in some way, jump on it. Don't do what I did, jump on it.
Yeah, and
Because
that's what I
if you
tell my
don't, you'll
daughter.
always wonder.
Yes. I wonder that for both my grandmother and my mother. I think about that. I was like, if things would have been different, because she was a young mom. She had me when she was 17, and this is, you know, at a time when that just was not popular. And they were at a Catholic school, and it was really not popular for her to have gotten pregnant, and um, to have me. And I think all the time, what if circumstances would have been different for her, where she wouldn't have had to go into the workforce and provide. And then what if she didn't marry, my stepfather, who was very, controlling, and she, wouldn't have had to be the homemaker? What if her circumstances would have been different? And I think about that probably every day, because, I call and I check on her, and she's with my sister now, and I think, what would her life have looked like? And for me, her happiness is something that I'm always thinking about. But Maddox, you said something, and you said, thinking about that roadmap, and like her kind of this implicitly or silently saying, just jump on it, don't do it. But that's the same thing I tell my daughter. However, and again, this is another conversation that is really hitting home for me now that we're having this, because I found myself saying the same thing to my daughter that many people have said to me, how are you going to take care of your family? but I'm sure that's the same thing that my mom heard. And talking to my daughter, who's very much a creative and plays all the instruments, and she paints and she writes and she dances. But in my mind, I'm always thinking, is that going to be enough to sustain her, to like
Mhm.
take care of her financially? And what is that, how is that going to shape? But then I'm also telling her, I want you to be happy in what you do. And I celebrate all that she does, when it comes to this artistic, creative side of who she is. But there's that little piece of me that says, I want you to be, I want to make sure that all is well with you and that you are, able to take care of yourself financially. But um, now that we're talking, and I'm seeing, I was like, there's like this continuum, this kind of this thread that has happened across generations, and I
Yeah.
don't think I really have thought about it until now.
Well, and something else that I see, and this comes up in several of our conversations with our featured guests, we as human beings have a tendency to go through life as if it's an either or. And it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and. And when we're willing to look at the and, it opens up possibilities for us that would have never been available to us in a world of either or. But even school teaches us either or. It's either the right answer or it's the wrong answer. And we go through life because the testing you were talking about, it's all, there's one right answer. And it trains us to think that there's one right answer in everything. And in life, that's just not true. There are multiple right answers in life, but we don't look at it that way because we've had a system that's indoctrinated us into one right answer.
Mhm. So
And we've
true.
had a couple of different people on the podcast that one said, I told myself when I started coming up through the ranks that I wasn't going to only have one passion, I was going to have two passions. He claimed that for himself. He has a corporate job where he's a tech person with Microsoft and he loves his job. On the other hand, he's an actor and now he's starting to produce and he loves that. And he's finagled to get Microsoft to be flexible with his schedule so he can do all of the acting and the producing. And he said, and I don't intend to give either one of them up. I love both of them so much that I'm going to do both of them. And I thought, wow, there's the and.
There's the and. How have you, either Dwight or Maddox, how have y'all navigated that either or? Because once you're in that framework, and I'm speaking for myself, I think it's difficult to say, hey, 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 let's press pause and let's look at things different, restructure your time differently so you can do those things that bring you the most joy.
Well, I'll say that I spent a lifetime inside the matrix, and in a lot of ways, I grew up in a household where we did all the things to try to play it safe, and I had to deal with knowing that I didn't quite fit the template. I was growing up as knowing that I was gay in a broken home where gay was not okay, but that prepared me for an enlistment during the height of the don't ask, don't tell era. So I was very well practiced, and I had to conform with what was accepted or acceptable for where I was, and that groomed me for entering into corporate life where I had to wear a different hat at different times, and I was never free to be exactly who I was. Every bit of messaging had to be through a specific lens because there was a lot of hedging. There was we could be truthful, but we couldn't tell the absolute truth because that might bump up against things that maybe couldn't be revealed for regulatory reasons or for proprietary reasons. And so I am well versed in what it is to cloak myself for others' comfort or because that's just simply the way it's done. And some life experiences have made it to where I had to deal with loss. I had to deal with being a caregiver during the pandemic. And I was scarred in ways that I'm sure a lot of people had things that they went through, but I had to ask what was really important. And I could appreciate that there were so many things that I had been told that I needed to pay attention to that I didn't. There were so many things that I was supposed to be led to believe were of the utmost importance that I knew were inconsequential because I grew to appreciate that the real things that matter are our connections and our relationships. And we need to take time to invest hard on those, really make it to where we elevate those things because chasing whatever momentary rewards that might be waved in front of us will leave us empty and we will always regret not being present, not making the time to spend time with those who love us and to make those memories. And it makes it a lot easier for me to figure out what it is I want to be moved by, what it is that motivates me. And it's really hard because I'm not as easily tricked. Someone can lay out a dollar figure and they're puzzled because they're not saying anything that speaks my language.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ooh, I gotta say, preach, brother, preach.
No, I mean, that is so profound. And when you said, having to fit into, no, I'm just going to say a box or a frame
Mhm.
to make others comfortable. I know that I've done that. I know that I do that in some of my relationships. Still, the my husband now, we've been married and divorced to one another, approximately 4 times to one another. But it has been me fitting myself into a box to make other people comfortable.
Mm.
And I know that I've done that in my relationship. And, now we're at a point where we say we're so old now that we're just going to be who we're going to be. And just be the best versions of ourselves, not necessarily for one another, but for those adult kids that we have and the grandchildren. Um, and we've come to this place where we can be who we're going to be. Completely opposites, completely different people, but we're not trying to force that. And I can look back and I was like, well, that's why it didn't work this time, or that's why it didn't work that time. It's me shrinking, feeling like I'm shrinking myself to fit into this like spot that I don't belong. And it creates this frustration. And him feeling like he's shrinking himself to be in this spot that he didn't ask to be in. And it creates this frustration. And so, we never got it right up until now. And just completely okay with being who we are. Um, I feel so privileged, blessed to be in a position where at Texas Folklife where I don't have to shrink to do that. And I can, truly be my authentic self, no matter what that looks like, or how that comes across in Texas or Oklahoma. It's just who I am. And I'm comfortable with that. That's one thing I can say. The only thing that my mother and my grandmother ever said is that everybody's not going to view you the same, and just to be aware of that. Come from a mixed multi-ethnic household, and they were like, people are not going to know how to take you, and just be aware of that. But they never tried to change um, who I was, or just as this kind of wild kid that would just be running barefoot down the street or whatever I want. They never changed. They never wanted to change that. That they didn't want me to be aware of the perception of others and how that could impact me.
They gave you quite a gift.
Yeah.
That's a big gift. You asked a minute ago about how we had navigated the either or the and. I I don't think I've only had language for that in the last few years, but I can look back and see that much of my adult life was an and instead of either or. I was a hairdresser, makeup artist for 40 years, and I always had projects on the side. I studied photography and shot professionally at one point. I planned weddings professionally. I got specialized training in hypnosis and did hypnosis for a period of time. And there's, I've studied and done coaching on and off for the last almost 20 years. Um, it's never really been an either or, it's been an and for me. And I don't know exactly how I did that, to be real honest. It wasn't a conscious, intentional decision. It was just kind of the way it unfolded. And now I can look back and see, you know, with those clear eyes and a language to be able to describe it, that I was choosing the
I
and
can
it
clearly say that.
worked.
I see that with from our very first conversation. That is the thing that resonated with me is that you all were doing your and I left, that initial meeting. It's the first time meeting you all, and I thought, I want to make sure that I didn't have the language for it until you're saying the and now. I want to be able to do that. I want to just, be able to do that. And I know that I'm doing that to some degree, but I want to do that fully. And Dwight, is something that you mentioned about the relationships.
Mhm.
And after that evening, like I have friends that I know that they're always going to be my friends, no matter what. I mean, through thick and thin, and we may go years and without speaking. And I will say, "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy." But I left that night, and I reached out to two of my closest friends that have been with me through, you name it. And I'm just like, "Hey, I'm just reaching out to see how you're doing," because I wanted to rekindle those relationships. And I started thinking about all of the beautiful relationships that I could have had along the years, but I put them aside for whether it was, that relationship didn't fit this time period or what have you. And I didn't have the language for it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew that, hey, I want to interact with different folks. I want to, if a relationship, if something is presented to me where I can be my authentic self, and that individual or those individuals are their authentic self, then I want that. I want to have those conversations. I want to do dinners. And I have not done that before. And I called my friend and she was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She was like, "Because this is not what you normally do. I may hear from you during the holidays." But she's like, "This is just out of the blue." And I said, we've been friends, but I want to deepen that connection. I want to be present. And now I feel like I'm in my and era where I'm like, yes, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, go to lunch with this person, and we're going to have breakfast, and we're just, and I feel like I'm in my and era.
It's a different animal, isn't it?
Hmm.
I want to, may I have permission to let you in on a little secret?
Yes.
You said a minute ago that you wanted to make room for those places where you could fully be authentic. And the secret is you don't look for them, you don't find them. The secret is that you create them. And the way
Mm.
you do that is you just show up everywhere you go authentic. And I mean, this really has become my superpower because I realized that when I show up everywhere I go fully authentic, it is a polarizer. And it is in a polarizer in the most beautiful way. You know, you think about a polarizer as being good or bad or in or out, polarizer is that extreme. And yes, it is. But there's something magical about authenticity. Polarizers of all different other kinds may not be this way, but with authenticity, when you show up truly authentic, it will draw a very specific type of person to you. And they will be authentic and they will be your people.
Mhm.
And then it's going to be on the other end of that continuum, that polarization is going to be the people that your authenticity makes them very uncomfortable because they're not authentic. And it will send them away. It will literally push them away, which is a beautiful thing because they're not your people. If they were,
That's
they wouldn't be going away.
that's that that's very profound. And I think for me, I've always had like when people would go away, I was like, well, what did I do? You know, maybe I was too much of this, or I was too over the top here, or what did I do? And I always, would say, well, I know that I think I have a problem with loss. But it's what you said, and I have started to walk in this, like if they're not with me, if they don't embrace who I am, then they're not for me. That's like you said, they're not my people.
They're not my people. And I don't even give it a second thought. I let them go. But what I have done is I've gotten to where when somebody walks away, I'm like, because in that moment, they made more space for the person that is my people that wants to
Mhm.
come and sit right next to me. You know, we only have so much time and space in our lives. And if we're spending it with people that aren't really our people and we're shoving ourselves like a square peg into a round hole to try to make it all work, there's no room for our true people to be there because we're with misfit people.
That's
The whole
true.
thing,
Super
it's like
true.
once you see it, you can't unsee it, you know? Once you see the
Hmm.
beauty of how it really works, you know, when somebody doesn't call back or they don't respond, I go, not my people. Next. Thank you. Because in that moment now I make it a point to focus on the people who are my people, who do want to come and sit right next to me. And
Hmm.
I don't give any energy or oxygen to those that drift away or don't show up or nothing wrong with them. They're just not my people.
And I like that. I like that because I think it's taken me a while to get to that because, like I said, it's like, well, did I say something? Did I do something? It's um, was I dressed a certain way? But no, and I'm just like they were in my spheres for a season. I'm sure that they've taught me some type of lesson along the way, but they're not my people. They're not who, if I needed to pick up the phone and just say, hey, can we just have a chat? Or can we just go to lunch? And there's no agenda, there's no, purpose. It's just I want to share time with you. I want to be with you, and it's taken me a while to embrace that, to say it's okay for me to want to just no agenda, no topic, just hey, I just want to spend time with you. That's it.
You know, I haven't gotten to the end of my life yet, so I don't know exactly what it's going to be like, but I I've thought about it a lot and when I'm on that deathbed where I'm minutes away from my final breath, I don't think I'm going to be thinking about my achievements.
Hmm.
I think that I'm going to be 100% focused on the people who love me and who I have loved. I you know, the older I get, the more, and I say this all the time, people are our greatest resource. Aside from food, water, and oxygen, people are our greatest resource, but we do not treat them like they're our greatest resource.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're right. You're not going to be on your deathbed going through a punch list. If anything, you may have the energy to contain one question, and that is, did it matter? Did you live your best life? Did you laugh? Did you love? Did you contribute?
Hmm. And that's, you know, I think about that as I watched, you know, friends go through a variety of things, lost friends to, you know, with to AIDS and in the pandemic and just a host of things. And using that word polarization, I thought, when it is my time to transition to wherever that may be, you know, I want to look back and think, you know, I love that person. That person loved me. We had a blast. That maybe we didn't disagree, or maybe we didn't agree on this, but we loved one another and we were our, you know, our true selves, in whatever way that looked like. And, you know, I know that these people have impacted me and I've impacted them. And that's what I think about and have started to think about that more so. As you know, the schedule is always going to be there, the work is always going to be there. But am I really carving out those moments to be with people that I enjoy, to be with people that they just, you know, are a breath of fresh air to be around? And I've started thinking about that more because I'm like, you know, a large part of my life was caregiving. And then it transitioned into something else and doing things that I just wanted to do. And then I was like, I think I got a little bit comfortable in just doing whatever I wanted to do. And but still being very busy and not carving out time to really be with people and knowing that I love being with people. I mean, I'm always like, who can I call to go on a road trip? You know, what can we do? Or who can, you know, who can we go and see while we're on this road trip? And I'm starting to think about that more, especially as I get older, is that I want to be around people. I want to be in community with others. I want to break bread. I want to have people come and sit at my table and just share in these moments that are not quantifiable by, you know, how much money you're going to make or what car you drive or it's just us. And we're talking and we're laughing or we're crying or whatever that may be.
As I have stepped more into my authenticity and my vulnerability, those people have shown up in masses. Like there's more amazing people around me than I could ever spend quality time with. That's the hard part. And I want to spend time with all. We meet so many amazing people. I mean, just amazing people that yes, I want to go and sit right next to them. And we managed to do some of it, but there's just not I wish I could clone myself. I
Um,
know so many
and
amazing people.
and speaking of, it is time for us to draw this session to a close.
It is. So we have one, you probably heard it 2 episodes ago. We save the big question to the end. And today's big question for you is, in your current creative life, what is the biggest pain point? And by that, I mean that challenge that, if it were solved, would be a game changer in your creative journey.
Time. That would be a game changer for me. Because that is one of the things that I think, oh, you know, in my creative life, in my creative journey, and I was just saying this morning, I was talking to a friend and I'm like, you know what? I am blocking off Fridays and that is going to be my writing day. I'm like, I'm going to carve out some time. I'm not going to make an excuse. And that will be the day that, I dig into my clay. I got into pottery last year, and I did not realize it was a messy endeavor. And everybody made a joke, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, how are you going to work through this? Because you like everything so neat and orderly." But it was so liberating. And I'm like, that is the best therapy I could ever have, is digging my hand in that clay, and it's messy, and I lose track of all time and person and place, and it's me and the clay, and I'm thinking. And so I told myself, I'm gonna block off some time. I don't have to work a 16-hour day. I do many times, but so I don't have to do that. And I'm going to give myself time. And that's going to be a gift to me, is giving myself time.
It is a gift that gives back more than most people realize. I've started painting. I'd started before a few years ago, and then I've gone for many years without painting, and I started painting again in the last couple of 3 months, and it's just as exactly as you say. It's just me and the paint and everything else. The rest of the world just goes away, and it's such this amazing gift. It nurtures my soul in a way that I haven't experienced before. It didn't nurture my soul like this the first time I tried painting. But now, making that time, once again, we've got our podcast and this business, this startup that we're working to really get up and running. And I'm making time to paint because my soul is just screaming, please, 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 please. I want to create.
And I found that being creative, or being really doing those things where, I am digging into whatever art form it is, that I'm a much better person for everyone else that I interact with.
I
That
agree completely.
I am a much better person. And it's because I have that creative outlet, whether it's collage or whether it's picking up the camera or clay. When I come out of there and they're like, "Oh, you're a different person." It's like the weight
Hmm.
of the world has just, it's gone away.
Well, and Alicia, you're not the first person to say time. I think that's maybe we're going to find that's partially universal. This has been wonderful. We do have to wrap because we've got another appointment in less than 2 minutes, but this has
Oh
been
my goodness.
such an enjoyable conversation. I have so enjoyed getting to know you better. And, when you're thinking about all those people you want to hang out with, we hope you reach out to us
I
because
will.
we would love to hang out with you. We're,
I
we're,
will.
we're here in the same city. We need to
We
make that
are.
happen.
Yes, yes, we will. I will do that. And thank you for inviting me. I have been looking forward to it. I put it on all my I'm old school. I still write things on the calendar, but I put it on all my calendars. I was like, oh, that's going to be, again, that gift of time to myself, where I can just be with the two of you. And I was like, I've been looking forward to it.
Well,
So
this is the tip of the iceberg. We'll have more conversations.
we will. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. You all be well.